If you followed this channel for even a little while, you know how important Jani Lane was to me. The very first video in the history of the channel was me talking about Warrant. I did an entire video in which I talked about my connection to Jani, how our lives seemed to be falling apart at the same time, how I always wondered why I was able to get sober while my musical hero died alone in a hotel room. There are so many questions that I felt had never truly been answered. And I don't know that we'll ever get all the answers we want about the life of Jani Lane. But in this conversation with his daughter, Maddi Lane, she opened up and answered so much of what had been unanswered. And I think by the end of this video, you'll be just as impressed with her as I was. Please enjoy this conversation with Maddi Lane.
But then we get the call that he had officially, he's pronounced dead, has not made it. Yeah. And of course I'm distraught, and my mom's distraught. And I mean, it could have been even something a little bit more sinister. Like, it could have been like, the music industry or someone in the industry, he owed them something, he couldn't pay it back, and I have no idea. Like, it could have been orchestrated. I have no clue. When I wasn't with my dad and I was with my mom, I saw a lot more of her struggle. I would physically have to help her sometimes through some of her physical symptoms of withdrawal. And it was just very traumatic, I would say. I can't say too much about this, but there is an interesting avenue that me and my sister are looking into with some of the unreleased music, being able to work with someone to re-release it, or actually officially release it. Them together were like firecrackers. Anytime they were around each other, almost, it seemed like they couldn't really stay civil, so they were fighting a lot, and it would get physical at times. I was 15, and that was when I had to tell my mom, I'm moving out. I'm sorry, I can't keep doing this cycle with you, you're not getting better. Him connecting with his audience was one of his superpowers, honestly, and that's what made him such the front man, and entertainer he was. Jerry Dixon from the band, we have a good relationship, we catch up and talk, and he's been a large advocate for me and my sister, in terms of royalties and things that may not have been completely hashed out. It kind of scares me to dig into, and I'm I don't know what the repercussions of that would be. I mean, there's rumors that his ex-girlfriend was the one with him last, and she was seen coming in and out of the room. Yeah, I would love to have a conversation with him now that I have the knowledge that I have and I've done some of my own healing. I would love to be able to sit down with him and really have that kind of conversation and hear from him what was really going on. Yeah. Every time I get a DM from somebody saying they met him in 1980, whatever, they always lead with, he was the nicest, most humble guy I've ever met in the industry. He felt like a friend of mine. They say that I remind them of him, and that's really, really nice to hear. I hope he went as peacefully as he could have. I really hope he didn't struggle or suffer, is all I can say, because he didn't deserve that. It's a lot of pressure, but I'm trying to think of him in these moments and be a little easier on myself and take care of myself, because nothing is worth losing your life over.
The hair metal guru, from Warrant to crew, the hair metal guru.
Hey, I am so honored to welcome Maddi Lane to the show. Maddie is Jani Lane's daughter. She is a budding musician herself, and it appears to be that she's becoming somewhat of a social media influencer. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Anyway, Maddi Lane, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. That was a great intro.
You are so welcome. I am such a fan of your dad's, and I know and I've seen you do some other interviews and you're talking, but it's so great to be able to ask some of these questions that I know like fans are interested in finding out about you and your father. But I know you have a big social media presence, and so this is something that I just read on one of your posts. You said this: if you didn't know, I'm a creative strategist and social media manager for 5+ brands at the moment. My niches vary from sports and fitness brands to wellness supplements to fashion, food, and even pets. So what can you tell me about this venture that you have?
Yeah, so I just graduated recently from UNC Chapel Hill with my master's in media and communications. I
Okay.
went there undergrad as well, but just went back to my master's. So I've always known that filming, content, making videos, entertaining, and storytelling were a big part of my personality and my passion. I just didn't know how to channel that until more recently. So now I'm freelancing, working with brands to tell their stories and make engaging content around that. So I help manage their socials. I'm on the strategy side, what's working right now, what's trending in these certain niches, and it's been really fun. So I'm still exploring that and kind of building my own personal brand
Yeah.
around it and wanting to post content myself as more of just a content creator. But yeah, ever since I was little, I can go into more detail. But even my dad, if he was here, he would tell you my first email address was Little Spielberg Lady because Steven Spielberg, I guess, was one of the only like video film directors I knew the name of at the time at 9 years old. And that was my email. And then on my flip phone that he bought me, I was filming videos of us, and
Right.
doing jump cuts and vlogging my day. So it's always been in me. Now I'm just finally channeling it, in
Okay.
a career. So it's really cool.
Okay. I will have your Instagram in the description, but besides like talking about some of these ventures, like you do some humorous stuff, you almost do some like modeling. So you're doing all, and then like sometimes you give advice, sometimes you talk about difficult things. So I've really enjoyed following you. I encourage everybody to go check out your Instagram. It's great. So anyway, you were born in 97. Are you 28?
I'm turning 28 in November, so
In
only a few months
November.
away.
Okay, so I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I may be responsible for you getting the name Madison, and here's why. Okay,
Wow.
okay, serious. In 1996, I'm a new father to a daughter named Madison Kennedy Bryant. Her middle name is Kennedy. Isn't that kind of ironic? Anyway,
That
so
is
I go see Warrant in Bismarck, North Dakota, and after the show, I get to meet Jani and hang out and we're talking and we're showing each other tattoos. So I have two Warrant songs tattooed on my arm. I saw red, it's kind of small, it's kind of hard to see, and
very
stronger
cool.
now. So I'm showing him those and he's showing me his tattoos and his tattoo for Taylor. And I'm like, oh, well, my daughter's name is Madison. She was just born, blah, blah, blah. And I kid you not very long after that, like in the music magazines, it's like, hey, Jani Lane is having a daughter and he's chosen the name Madison. So anyway, there you go. Now you know.
Very cool. Yeah, I remember there's a few different stories I heard about my name. One of them being I was going to be named Albany at one point because it's the
Okay.
capital of New York. And so Madison, Wisconsin, there was like a state capital play on my name, but yeah, Maddie Madison was a popular name at the time, and probably you saying that planted the seed. So
Right.
I'll give you
Right.
some credit there.
There you go. You're welcome. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. So
I love my name, so
yeah. Okay. Um, before your mom met, and I'm just going to say this right now. If I ask anything that you don't want to answer, obviously just say, you know what, I'd rather not talk about that. But before your mom met your dad, she dated some other interesting people.
mhm.
Can you like maybe let people know if you care to, like who she had involvement with?
So there's probably some people I don't know, but the two main figures that I was made aware of and have seen in tabloids from back in the day were Vanilla Ice. She
Okay.
had a quick, brief fling with the infamous honey bear in the back of the limo picture,
Yeah.
and then Donald Trump, which most people probably know if they know anything about me and my family.
Right.
Yeah, she had a romantic relationship that lasted a couple months, from what I know, and they were pictured together. And she actually recently had come out and talked about him, and her words got, I guess, twisted, or she was painted as calling him a womanizer, and she wanted to kind of like clear her name on that. But
Right.
yeah, so she has a link to him. I don't think they're in contact anymore. I think there's just been some recent upchurn of
Yeah.
information about that. But yeah, back in the day, that's the picture. Sometimes if people ask me about my parents,
Sure.
I'll show them that, and they're like, "What? That's so crazy." She
Yeah.
also dated Bella Hadid's husband, or dad. Sorry, so she could have married Bella Hadid's
Oh, no
dad.
way.
So I could have been a Hadid, but I was not, which I'm glad I'm Maddie Lane instead.
Right.
But that would have been just that's just a cool factoid, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you know how your parents met?
I do. So, from what I know, they were both in LA. I'm not sure the year they met exactly, but they were at an earthquake benefit event in LA.
Sure.
And I guess there was a lot of big names, artists there. She was a model. She was obviously connected and dating so many people that were in the industry themselves. So they met there, and I think the rest is history. I'm not sure how long their courting to dating to everything else was, but they were together for quite a bit and then got married and then had me very shortly after. So, and that was his second wife, and that was her first marriage. So,
Right. Okay. Okay. So what can you, and obviously there's, things you don't remember when you're really, but what do you remember about your early childhood when you start to have a memory? What are your memories of growing up and things that you were doing and about your family?
wow, yeah, I have very vague memories of being in Florida with my mom a bit when I was younger. Actually, my first memory was probably in LA. I was born in Van Nuys, like Van Nuys Hospital, outside of LA in Woodland Hills. And I remember like probably like 2 years old before we ended up moving to Ohio. I was listening to Rob Thomas's Smooth in the car. I
Yep.
remember hearing that song and I was like, oh, I like that beat or the melody, but I couldn't really vocalize that. But I just remember hearing it. And then I heard it later in my life as a younger kid. And I was like, oh, I remember that song.
Yeah.
So that was probably my first memory. And it's funny, it's a musical memory, of course. My ear must have been primed to catch that,
Yeah.
runs in the family. But yeah, other memories. Then I moved to Ohio with my parents when I was like 3. So a lot of memories from Ohio, hanging out with my friends, going to school, snow days, hanging out with my dad's mom, my grandma on that side of the family was amazing. She passed away when I was like 5, so I didn't get much time with her. But aunts and uncles were all over Ohio. That was where his family was from. So that was a really fun time for me to be able to spend time with them. And yeah, it was a pretty good experience. There were some rough memories in there too, and I can get into more of that if you would like to know. But
Sure.
yeah, definitely a mix. But those are my earliest
Right.
memories.
Do you remember when did you realize that my dad isn't your normal dad?
Hmm. Pretty early on. I mean, probably like 5 or 6. My mom, he would be gone a lot, so he was not always home. So obviously, I would ask, and he would tell me he was going to work and do music, and I didn't really understand I guess, level of fame he had. I kind of just was okay. He's just doing this for himself. But then my mom would play demos of his music while he was gone, and we would like dance and sing along to it.
Sure.
So I knew he made music, but I don't think it really hit me until probably like 10,
Yeah.
like 10, 11, when my parents divorced when I was 8.
Yeah.
Me and my mom went to Wilmington, North Carolina, where some of my family still is there.
Yeah.
And then he went to LA. So I ended up living with him for a period of a couple of years, kind of back and forth from like 3rd grade to 6th grade. And I remember I went on like a little local, like Eastern United States tour, or went to a few different gigs with him. I rode with the band in the van and everything.
Okay.
Was with them for a few shows. And I remember like seeing the crowd and people were just, stopping him, wanting photos, pandemonium a little bit. And I was like, oh, wow, this is like, he's a big deal, Like I've always heard his music and knew he did music, but
Right.
seeing the amount of people that were so happy to see him and seeing him on stage and people wanting my signature on their t-shirts, it was definitely a humbling experience. Not humbling, I guess the opposite, but kind of a like starstruck experience for me. But he was also very humble about it and never really, played into it much. And he didn't want me involved a lot in the photos and the signings, so he kept me protected. So that's how I remained pretty humble, and I wasn't exposed to it like maybe most kids growing up with
Sure.
rock star parents.
You can probably attest to this. I think having been around this stuff for a long time and talked to a lot of fans of him and that band, is that when people met him, he made them feel like they knew him. So even if it was only for a few minutes, you end up walking away feeling like, you know what, Jani Lane likes me. Like he's a good guy. Do you hear that from other people?
Absolutely. Every time I get a DM from somebody saying they met him in 1980, whatever, they always lead with he was the nicest, most humble guy I've ever met in the industry. Like he felt like a friend of mine. He actually cared about me and wanted to ask me questions, and he like lived for that. I know that for a fact. Like that was probably the biggest motivator in why he did what he did, but was because of the fans and because he loved making people happy and giving people something to hold on to, giving them hope. And of course, it was cathartic for him to write music, but him connecting with his audience like was one of his superpowers, honestly, and that's what made him such the front man, and entertainer he was. And he was Warrant, really. So, I mean, of course, credit to the other members, but he was kind of the iconic face of Warrant. That's why he had that aura that not many artists have. He he's a legend. So I definitely hear that all the time. And thankfully, I've been really happy to hear that people have felt that from me as well. Or when I've performed, talked to people, they say that I remind them of him. And that's really, really nice to hear.
Um, just following your social media and seeing like you have a YouTube channel and your social media, and you're not afraid to show that you're human. You're not afraid to like kind of be goofy. That, you
Mhm.
know, it makes it easier to like approach you and say, "Hey, would you want to come on the channel?" Because you don't seem like you know, like you're holier than thou or anyway. So I completely, yes, I can attest to that. So from what little I know.
I appreciate that. Yeah, that's my goal. I want to be as approachable as possible. Again, of course, with limits, but I'm like, life's too short. Like, I don't want to take things too seriously. And I love to like have my dad's legacy live on through me in any way, whether that means directly, doing covers of his songs and doing interviews like this, or just living my authentic life. I think I owe that to myself. And I know he would be super proud to see that. So I
Sure.
keep that in mind as I go through my journey.
Did you interact much with the other guys in Warrant, or did any of them in particular maybe, get close to you or talk with you or hang out with you?
Not particularly. When I was younger, I did meet all of them, and I would go to some of their sound checks. I would go to some of the studio recording sessions when they would be playing and my dad would be singing. So I got to know them, kind of mutually, I guess, but we didn't like hang out a lot outside. My dad kind of was like, "All right, business, we do this," and then it was usually just me and
Of
him and the
course.
family after that. So,
Of
but I
course.
was definitely familiar with them, and they were always really, really nice to me. And I was like the little sister, or like the fun little girl that they could
Right.
like a little doll, I guess, they could just
Yeah.
kind of hang out with. And I was always goofy and silly and a little shy. So I always had a lot of fun with them. I love just hanging out and being in that atmosphere and watching them play and
Yeah.
everything. More recently, I've gotten a lot closer with some of the bandmates. I've been talking with them more about maybe potential collaborations or just keeping in touch. Jerry Dixon from the band, we have
Yeah.
a good relationship. We catch up and talk. And
Great.
he's been a large advocate for me and my sister in terms of royalties and things that may not have been completely hashed out from my dad's death and his
Yeah.
estate. There was a lot of weirdness. I won't get into all of it, but basically it just got very messy. And me and my sister, I would say, and his late wife, Kimberly, also got a pretty short end of the stick on some things. And we got betrayed by some people that we thought we could trust. So they've
Okay.
been a really big advocate for us in making sure that anything that they reap, they're like, we want you guys to be a part of it. And, so I really appreciate a lot of them, especially Jerry.
That, that's so great to hear because I was going to ask about that, but thanks for because that's good to know that they haven't just abandoned you
Mhm.
after so. Um, and my dog's knocking my stuff down. Charlie, you're very naughty. And she's actually part of my theme song. It talks about Charlie because she makes many appearances in the videos. Charlie, move out of the way. You mentioned Taylor, whose mom is Bobby Brown. Were you close with them at all? Did Taylor come and get to stay? Did you develop a relationship with her when you were growing up?
We did have a relationship. We hung out a lot when I was younger. I don't remember all of the times that we hung out, but I see a lot of pictures of us together, especially when we were hanging out with my dad. So
Yeah.
he made a lot of time for us when we were younger. As years went by, we would mainly see each other on holidays or kind of birthdays or celebrations. We weren't together all the time. I felt mostly like an only child because I was primarily with my mom and she was with her, I think, grandmother and mom in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So we would visit, but we kind of felt more like cousins, I would say, than sisters sometimes because we weren't living directly in the same house every day seeing each other.
Right.
But we did have a good relationship. When my dad passed, we reconnected and we had kind of drifted at that point. And, she was a lot older than me and we were in different life phases. So we definitely connected over that and, were able to grieve together. But in some ways, that might have even drifted us more because I think we both were kind of grieving in different ways and had different relationships with him and kind of needed to figure out who we were as women, for a while and just kind of figure out our own path. But now, more recently, especially now that I'm older and I'm out of school, I'm in the working world and I'm in my late 20s now, I really appreciate having a relationship with her. And
Okay.
she'd always made sure every Christmas to send me something and reach out. And she really was the driver of our relationship for a long time. So I've tried to give that back to her tenfold. And we exchange gifts and talk a lot now. And now that we're like more similar, I guess the gap doesn't feel so big in
Sure.
our age gap. So we can relate a little bit more to each other and a lot of what we're going through. So I really do appreciate her. And we have a much better relationship and closer relationship than we used to. So I'm happy about that.
That's awesome. When and again. if I ask anything. But do you? So your parents got divorced, I think, when you were 8.
Hmm.
And and I'll just say this right. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I did a big article once, and then a video just kind of talking about how, your dad was like my musical hero and how we both struggled with alcohol. I went to Iraq in 2003. I was gone for 16 months with the military. And when I got home, I got sober, somehow. And I was always so sad that he didn't, like we had these dark years together. Anyway, I'm just telling you that I felt this connection to him because of some of our highs and some of our lows. When did you realize that there was a problem? Like, hey, like he has some problems. Like,
Hmm.
when did you notice that?
Yeah, sadly, pretty young because I was exposed to it a lot. Again, I don't, it is what it is now.
Of
Obviously,
course.
I wish things could have been a little bit different, but I don't blame him, like rest in peace. Like I know he was battling a lot of things that I did not understand at that age, but
Yep.
I was exposed probably around like, I say like 4 or 5 years old. I was pretty aware. I wasn't sure exactly the mechanics or what addiction was at that point, but I knew something was wrong. I could just tell the inconsistency in behavior. Same with my mom. So they both had struggled with addiction and alcoholism. So them together were like firecrackers. Anytime they were around each other, almost it seemed like they couldn't really stay civil. So they were fighting a lot, and it would get physical at times.
Mhm.
And it was scary. Being the daughter of these two parents that you want to just get along and have a happy life together. It's really hard to watch, and I felt like I had to mediate sometimes where I shouldn't have had to do that. So definitely knew there was something wrong. I definitely really craved and wanted stability and peace between them, and I wanted my dad more in my life. But he was obviously gone a lot, doing his stuff. So I was with my mom more, but I noticed her addiction too because I was around her the most. So I definitely picked up on hers and I was around it and exposed to it a lot more frequently.
Yep.
But my dad's was definitely those bigger outbursts and
Yep.
it would surprise me and be kind of sad to see. But then I got older and around probably 10 or 11 when I started like living with him when he got custody of me and I lived in LA for a couple of years. That was when I really started noticing his patterns and he had a very good system. He had a lot of good support system around him. I guess you could, that's subjective, but I would say in terms of making sure I was okay, he
Yeah.
always made sure if he was not okay or something was going on, he relapsed. I was always sent to a friend's house, sent to a family friend. He had a lot of people in his circle that had kids my age, so I would just go somewhere and I would never really see him struggle.
Yeah.
He would always struggle in silence or kind of like retreat.
Yeah.
So I do appreciate that over the years he didn't subject me to too much of his struggle.
Right.
But I still knew it was going on. I always picked up on a vibe that was off, or he
Right.
was MIA. I knew what that meant.
And I'm assuming, tell me if I'm wrong, but like people were kind of shielding you and hiding you when things were bad, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And of course, there were minor slip ups, or I would see him, in those moments sometimes, but they were really good at kind of letting him, recover and me, be somewhere else. My mom didn't really have that luxury and didn't have that support system.
Yeah.
So I was pretty much her kind of only core, I would say, family member or like person in her life to really help support her during that time.
Right.
So when I wasn't with my dad and I was with my mom, I saw a lot more of her struggle. I would physically have to help her sometimes through some of her physical symptoms of withdrawal. And it was just very traumatic, I would say. I had to convince her a lot and plead with her to go to rehab because I was scared I might lose her. And then once I lost my dad, that multiplied tenfold. I was like, I don't want to lose both of you. Like, please. Like,
Yeah.
so my mom's still okay. She's fine. We have a decent relationship. We are talking a lot more now.
Okay.
And I do really love her. And I've seen a lot of her growth and she's worked through a lot of her trauma and a lot of things that she hadn't really noticed or known about herself. So
Right.
I'm here to support from a distance, obviously. Like a lot has gone on between us, but I do, of course, still love my mom and I want the best for her. So yeah, it's been a journey with the addiction and learning about it. But I'm glad I know what I know now because now I'm very aware of it myself. And if I notice anything in me, I'm very quick to, find healthy coping strategies and work on
Yeah.
my trauma. I'm in therapy,
Yeah.
working through a lot of different things that kind of come with navigating your 20s after a childhood like that. So I'm glad I have the awareness and really great support, current family that I have nearby to really, and a great boyfriend. I have a lot of great people in my corner. So
Yes.
I'm blessed, but it was a
Um,
tough time, for sure.
but my stepfather was an alcoholic, and I swore I was never going to end up that way. And then, wake up one
Yeah.
day, 25, and you're like, wait a minute, I am an alcoholic. So I appreciate that you talk about this stuff because I think it's better to be up. And hey, here's what I went through, and you're being strong enough to talk about this. Maybe give somebody else the strength to go. You know what? I need to confront my issues. So anyway, that's it's
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think a lot of people, again, I know like alcoholism is a very strong genetic factor. It runs in families. And of course, when you're raised around it and you have that trauma, you might resort to, you might repeat the pattern or repeat the cycle.
yeah
I've been very careful not to. I do drink socially. I know it's controversial. People might say, why would you even risk it? But I'm very safe in the manner that I do. I'm very aware of myself. And I know if it ever went in a direction that
yeah
even resembled an addictive like trait there, I would back off. But I
sure
haven't noticed an addictive personality with alcohol. I mean, I've noticed it in some different ways, and I can share that. One being, I guess, maybe internet or screens.
yeah
I definitely remember from being a young child into now, I definitely have found an escape in online worlds, internet communities, watching YouTube videos. Like that was my cope when things were really stressful in my life, because that was like my one kind of peace. I knew I could like watch something and distract and numb out the pain or the confusion. So I definitely still am working on that. And I think a lot of us have addictions to our phones. So
yeah
not super uncommon. That, and I've noticed with food too, and I've had a much better relationship with food, but that was an area where I felt manifested a lot of my kind of need for control and being very neurotic about what I ate and having to look a certain way and all of that, and like eating to cope and feel good. So I was like, yeah, it's not alcohol, but it's a very similar behavior. I felt like I resembled my parents sometimes with some of that. And I was like, ooh, I need to really, work on this and figure out what the core issue is and go to therapy and talk about it and, have a better relationship with food. So that's been a lot better for me. But although it may not have appeared so on the internet, I definitely struggled for years with how I thought, just disordered thoughts about eating and feeling insecure. So it manifests in ways you may not see. But you have to be aware of it, be gracious with yourself, and truly understand what's going on, and then be able to just release and feel it. You can't logic your way through, parsing through feelings and a lot of what happened to me. So I'm really working on a lot of nervous system
yeah
regulation right now, and
yeah
really somatic, like experiencing healing, not just, oh, I went through trauma, so that's why I feel this way, but really like releasing it through breathing and walking and meditating. And a lot of that has been super helpful. So it takes work, but it's worth it.
Do you think like so you have a big social media presence, and do you think
Mhm.
that getting that constant, talk about like how you look and and this and that, is that part of what creates it in you that you're like, I have to look a certain way, and if I eat
Mhm.
a certain way I might not look that certain. I mean, you hear about that frequent. Do you feel like that's where you started to get, you talked about the food issue?
That's definitely a contributing factor. I think most people, especially women, going on in the internet, you see this standard of beauty, or you see what's accepted or what's celebrated and how people look, and see people that aren't celebrated for looking a certain way. So it's really hard to not internalize that, even if you think, oh, like I love myself, I don't need to, uphold any standards. That does stick with you, and
Yeah
it kind of creeps in. Like I don't know if anyone watching has had an issue with food or eating disorder or disordered eating thoughts. Like it's not something that's like all or nothing. It's like it kind of creeps in, and it's like it rationalizes. It tries to be like, oh, well, I'm just being healthy, or I just want to work out because you kind of convince yourself that you're doing the right thing, but there's this like little voice that's kind of telling you need to or else, and it's very negative and very critical, and you end up believing it for a while, but then you realize it's kind of tearing you apart instead, and there's no end goal anymore. It's like there's no, like, you can't get any better, I guess, so you
yeah
always want more. And
yep
so when you start recognizing that feeling, it's like there's something within you. It's not your physical, it's not,
yeah
this feeling you're trying to chase. Like there's something in here that's just, you need to actually go inward to like figure out what that is and like fulfill that within yourself. There's nothing out there that's gonna make you feel the way you want to feel. So yeah, it's a really sneaky feeling, but the internet and social media definitely, of course, influences how we feel and view our bodies. But I've seen a lot of positive content about
yeah
inclusivity and positivity, and
yep
I'm really trying to work out and eat well, not because I feel like I have to uphold a certain look, but because it makes me genuinely feel
yep
like I feel confident, I feel strong. I'm like, I like to take care of myself. It's a privilege, I'm on this earth, I want to do that. But I eat ice cream, I treat myself. It's all about balance, and I have such a sweet tooth, and so did my dad. Probably got it from him, honestly, but
Yeah.
we love to do that together. We love to eat desserts together. But yeah, I'm like, there's so much more, to life. And now that I'm balancing a lot more and like focusing on what makes me feel fulfilled and good despite that, you have to fight the thought sometimes, but totally worth it when you can get to that kind of more fulfilled and secure place. It's really nice. So I'm slowly getting there. I'm still on the journey. So I'll probably be sharing a lot of this on my pages too. So
Sure.
anyone can follow along.
What one thing that I related to your dad about is when I was drinking, I got really heavy. I was probably 260 pounds, and I always struggled with it. And after I quit drinking, I became like a fitness fanatic and all that. Do you remember when your dad was on that reality show? I can't even remember what it was called.
Celebrity Fit Club.
That Celebrity Fit Club.
Hmm.
And I interviewed a guy, Alex Grassi, who played guitar with them for a little while, and he said before that show they were telling him he needed to gain weight and so they can make the show more dramatic. And I just didn't know if you remembered that. And did he ever like talk about like wanting to diet or wanting to, you know, look a certain way?
So I remember when he went on the show, I was really young. I was like maybe 4 or 5.
Oh,
It was
okay.
I was young. I remember seeing the show air. My mom watched it with me, I believe, or maybe it was after the fact I watched it. I don't remember the exact timeline, but I remember him being on the show. And then I remember there was some issue because he had relapsed on the show, I'm pretty sure, and had to leave early. So he couldn't play out the entire season. But that was the first time that I was ever like, oh, like, okay, people are trying to like lose weight. I didn't really understand as a kid. You're like, okay, like, why are adults doing this? Like, you don't really know yet.
Yeah.
But I knew he was on a show, and I guess it was kind of cool that he was on a show like that. But I think later in life, when I started living with him in LA more, when I was like 10, 11, I started having my own body. And, when you're going through puberty and you're a young girl, you're starting to be confused about why you look the way you do and
Yeah.
start comparing. But my dad would make comments sometimes around that time that I remember him being very, like, he would oscillate. Like, he would go to the gym a lot. So I would go with him, not to work out, but I would go into like the like kids
Yeah.
so the kids like play center while he would work out. I would hang out in there. So I'd go with him, but I was never actually working out. I was in sports and other things, but he was always making comments about wanting to be consistent and lose weight in the gym. And definitely eating came up. He was like, I want to make sure we're eating organic. And even with it started to kind of come off into me a little bit and how he would like make food for me or want me to eat. He would make comments about what I would eat sometimes. And I was like, like I kind of was like, whatever, dad. Like I'm a kid. I want to eat what I want to eat.
Yeah.
But it definitely stuck with me a little bit, or I was like, like, why is he so fixated on this? Or like, what's going on? But then he would gain weight, lose it. So he would oscillate a lot. So I knew he was having, other issues. And of course the drinking, I
Yeah.
learned how, it contributes to your weight gain too, just the alcohol itself
Yeah.
and maybe eating while you're under the influence. So yeah, I started picking up on it. He would make comments about it, and I was aware, but I tried to keep a shield. I was like, like that's you, not me.
Yeah.
And I would live with him kind of sporadically and go back to my mom. So I wasn't getting the same messaging or influence all the time. I would kind of get different signals from my parents. So I kind of grew up with mixed signals, I would say. My mom was also pretty health conscious and would do like home workouts and not really diet, but she would like eat like tuna, like she'd eat a lot of tuna things or add tuna for protein. And she would drink and gain weight and want to lose it too. So they both had that cycle where they'd gain, lose, gain, lose. I didn't really relate because I always naturally kind of had a decently slim physique and I didn't have to really like watch what I ate. So I didn't really feel the need to do anything. But I think as I got older, I definitely started feeling that. And I wonder if some of it was from some of the things they would say about themselves, the media, other family and friends that would make comments about themselves. Obviously, it affects you, even if they don't realize it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was aware of my parents both having some issues with their bodies and
Yeah.
their health overall, for sure. But to me, I was like, I would much rather you put on a little bit of weight and be sober than,
Yeah.
to me, I was like, that does not matter to me. Like, I just love you as my parent. I want you here with me and to be happy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it was tough to see
Um,
them.
do you remember when they told you that they were going to get divorced or?
I don't remember the exact moment they told me or announced it, but I remember the lead up. I wanted them to get a divorce, honestly. I was like, you guys are like not good for each other, clearly. Like, this has been very traumatic. I'm exhausted watching you guys try and work things out, fight. Of course, deep down, I didn't want them to divorce. I wanted them to work it out, but I got to a point where I even gave up. I was like, I would rather us have peace and stability and you guys, live elsewhere and not be together than try to force this and be so explosive. I knew it was damaging to me. So I was like, all right, maybe this is for the best. So I remember my mom making comments to me a lot about it. She was the more vocal, kind of would tell me more about what was going on. My dad kept a little more hush hush and would argue with her in front of me, but never talk to me about anything.
Okay.
I think he must have had a boundary with not wanting to talk to me about stuff. My mom really didn't, honestly. I feel like I knew everything was going on. I was kind of a mama's girl for a while, and she was very good at keeping me under her wing, I feel like. So yeah, she told me, and she was going through all the process, and he wasn't around a lot during that time, of course. And then we moved to Wilmington, North Carolina, like right after everything was finalized. We sold the house and left. But yeah, it was a blur, honestly, during that time. There's not a lot of specific moments I remember. It was just a blur.
Of course, of course. And you said your mom was more open about things like that. And again, sometimes I'm asking stuff and I'm like, dude, are you really gonna ask that? So I don't want to pry. But did your mom ever try to explain what was going on with your dad? Like, hey, this is why your dad's having issues, or maybe she didn't.
She wouldn't really explain why he was having the issues. It was more that he was like, she would just, very much emphasize like something's not okay.
Okay.
I think she had a lot of her own, obviously, had a lot of her own issues and
Yeah.
insecurities and unresolved trauma. Now
Right.
that I'm older, I can look back and see it all very clearly. But back
Right.
then, you're like, your parents are like perfect. And then they start doing, crazy things. And you're like, well, what's going on? My mom was really good at painting herself, I think, to be a little bit more of the hero and
Right.
making my dad out to be the villain a lot of times, or she's the victim, he's the abuser. I think they both had a fair share of they both were very like emotionally and physically abusive towards each other. They both struggled with their addiction, and they both let me down in a lot of ways. Obviously, they didn't mean to, but their actions had an effect on me. But my mom, I think, was able to play a different narrative, and my dad kind of got pitted as like the bad guy every time. So I, as a kid, of course, I believe my mom. And I'm like, yeah, like dad's scary when he's like this and he's not really ever here. So I trust the person I'm with every day. So my mom was really good at kind of having me on her side, I would say, a lot of the time. And she wouldn't really explain it in a very like, here's how you can understand better what's going on way. It was more of like a here's how bad he's being, kind of to deflect off of herself a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't really pick up on that till I was older in my teens. And, I was in therapy more, and
Yeah.
I was living with her after my dad passed, and I started seeing her patterns and seeing how she would still talk about him. And I was like, I don't think you're getting off so easy here. Like, I think you also have a lot of responsibility you're not taking for what happened.
Right.
She didn't like to hear that. So
Yeah.
yeah, she didn't really explain a lot to me about it, but she would talk a lot about him in a negative light a lot of times. And probably not something that I needed to hear at that age, but it happened. She was venting. I was her
Yep.
only, I think, support at that time to really let it out on. So yeah, I took a lot of emotional load, I would say.
You mentioned that you've been in therapy. Is that
Mhm.
is that do you feel like that helps you? Is that something you would encourage people to do, or?
Absolutely. Yes. I think everyone, despite what you have gone through growing up, or even if you think you have the perfect relationship with your family, like there's always something that you can work through. Again, I wouldn't say everyone needs to, like if they 100% just don't feel like they need it or they don't want to, but I would encourage you to just explore it.
Yeah.
Especially if there's anything that's been like kind of just that weird voice, if there's anything that's kind of been bothering or something that you're like, you know what, like I don't really feel like this is like a huge traumatic event, but something just feels off about this relationship with this person, or I'm struggling to really overcome this feeling. There might be something underneath that you don't even remember happened, or
Right.
something that you just can't process as well on your own. So
Mhm.
I always encourage it. I was kind of court mandated and had to be in therapy a lot just because of my situation, but now I choose to seek it out myself because I know how important it is for me. And it's helped me really process a lot of the things that happened and be able to be more in tune with me, because I feel like through a lot of what happened, I neglected parts of myself and was always the kid that had to put on the good face and get through school and not worry anybody and protect my parents and not rat them out. And, I kind of I had to take on a lot of the emotional load, and I was kind of parentified in a lot of ways
Okay.
that I didn't know I was until after the fact. So when you grow up that way, you think, oh, well, I mean, other kids probably do this too. Then you start talking to people and they're like, wait, that's crazy. And you're like, oh, maybe my childhood wasn't normal. Maybe I need to see how this might affect me. And then as an adult, I've definitely seen a lot of things manifest in my personality and how I navigate my relationships, how I regulate my emotions, and even self-esteem, where I'm like, wow, like I've really been impacted. Not that I'm a victim, not that my life's over, but just, you recognize like, okay, there are parts of me that are a bit stifled still and affected negatively by what happened. And rather than just sitting on it and just hoping it gets better, I'm actually trying to actively work on it. So,
Yeah.
everyone has their own journey and their own healing. I can't tell anybody what's like the best or not
Yep.
best thing to do, but
Yep.
I recommend therapy. Even if, again, like you have a loving relationship with your family, and it's still always cool to kind of learn more about yourself, and just the
Yeah.
psychology of it is very intriguing to me. So I think I like it for the mental, intellectual side of it and the emotional side.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's cool.
I mentioned my daughter and I'll just be honest, are estranged. She doesn't really talk to me, and I'm not trying to make this about me, but I've in the years since that has happened, I've tried to, reach out and be like, hey, here's what I was going through. Here's, and apologize for the way I was. And I just, was there ever a time where your dad sat you down and say, hey, Maddie, I just want, I want to tell you why maybe certain things have happened, and obviously you don't have to go into that, but I just, I just figured I'd ask because it's a part of your relationship. Did he ever try to open up and explain his side of whatever was happening with him?
I don't remember that conversation happening. He passed away when I was like 12, 11 or 12.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
was really young. I don't know if he felt I could understand, or maybe he
Sure.
didn't really know how to articulate it to me. I would get little glimpses, or he would talk a little bit about, he would apologize, or, he would recognize that he made mistakes and would want things to be different. And, when I would live with him, especially, because I was very distrusting, or I was kind of like weary of him. And I'm like, I want to live with my mom. Like, I haven't heard the best things about you, and now, and then I would live with him, and he would, show me his like softer, more paternal side. And we would actually bond and like hang out a lot more. And so I would get to know him, and
Yeah.
he would explain little bits. We would never have like really intense sessions together. We didn't do therapy together. I went to therapy under his care, but we would kind of allude to certain things, and he would kind of fill in the gaps for me and just take some accountability for what happened. But yeah, not too often, not that I can remember. I think my parents had trouble. That's probably one of the main reasons they struggled so much, was because they didn't really work through what was going on. I think they thought they were, or they were doing what they could just to kind of function. They were in survival mode a lot of their life. I don't think they were really thriving in a lot of ways. And, they were both really good at covering that up a lot of times. But
Sure.
yeah, I would love to have a conversation with him now that I have the knowledge that I have, and I've done some of my own healing. I would love to be able to like sit down with him and really have that kind of conversation and hear from him what was really going on.
Yeah.
Because I hear bits and pieces from family, or I hear, yeah, he struggled with mental health and he was diagnosed bipolar. He was, even my family have said like he probably had ADHD growing up, and like that wasn't really something that was talked about, like all these things that he had a lot of anxiety, he was forgetful and didn't do his work, but he was so smart. And he had dyscalculia, or like a dyslexia with numbers.
Okay.
So there's a lot of little things, and I had suspected at one point that I might even have either ADHD or something else. And I was noticing things impacting my day to day, and I was like, oh, I feel like I feel like an alien sometimes. Like I don't really feel like I connect similarly how other people do. But I've had to research, is that like a genetic component? Is that like a neurodivergency, or is that from trauma?
Yeah.
From growing up with such instability, has that created a like complex trauma response in me that's, manifesting, looking like ADHD? I was very curious about myself for a while, because I was like, I never had the time to really explore who I was growing up.
Yeah.
I was so externally focused on everyone being okay. And then I was like, wait, I need to dig into who I am, give myself that space. So yeah, that's what I've done a lot more of. And I wish I could talk to him now, but I know he's looking down very proud. And I mean, I understand, just bottom line, there was a lot of unresolved trauma, and he was in a lot of pain internally, and probably didn't have the resources or the means to really heal, obviously. So I wish he could have, but, I'm happy he's not suffering anymore. And I know a lot of people have similar struggles, and I hope my content and the things that I'm researching and doing and, putting out into the world can help other people, or even kids in my situation that have parents that are struggling.
Yes.
If I can resonate with them, that would be like my dream. So
It
yeah.
absolutely is. And I'm just like, you're so well spoken. You sound so, and don't take this the wrong way, so much older than your years, listening to you talk. Like, so,
Yeah.
I feel that you really are impacting people, and the stuff that you're saying right now, and just opening up about, hey, I've been in therapy and this and that. Even older people like me can kind of learn from some of the stuff that you're saying. So it's phenomenal. Thank you. Um,
course.
And your dad and I guess I mean he's what, probably 8 years older than I was. We came from a time where men didn't come out and say, "Hey, I'm struggling, I'm depressed." Like you were supposed to cover that up, and you were
Mhm.
supposed to act like everything was fine all the time.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, those of us that were fans would have said that guy is probably the most confident, nothing bothers him. That's what we would have said about him when, that's what you see on stage, but that's not real life.
Yeah. I think he had a lot of pressure on him to uphold this image, and keep the success riding. He hit it really
Yep.
big, really early.
Yep.
And then, things don't sustain or, things change. And I think, yeah, that obviously took a hit at his, he's an artist. He creates, he creates, but it's also a means of making money in a career. So when you combine parts of your soul that you're literally writing and, creating for others, it kind of takes away that spark sometimes because, he probably struggled with, I want to create. This is a part of me, it's cathartic, but if it's not paying the bills, then it takes away, it puts a lot of pressure on your craft and makes art a chore. And
Yep.
it probably made him feel very burnt out a lot. I can imagine that probably fueled a lot of his need to escape or, the addiction really spiraling a lot
Yeah.
was to cope with that pain of like, I don't really, what's next for me? Am I enough? Like, am I upholding? I'll never be that pinnacle of success like I was, trying to relive in the past, probably,
Yeah.
that's tough. And I know he, as an artist, I mean, I'm very creative. I'm not in the music world as much as he was. I still like to sing and do some music projects here and there,
Yep.
but I'm a creative. I love to write. I love to do videos and social media, which, may not be looked at as like impressive, but
Yeah.
for me, like, that's my way of expressing myself. And it's really hard. I get in my head all the time. I'm like, all these people are doing such much cooler videos or, they're able to talk so much better than me or they're more relatable on this. And it keeps me stifled. And I don't really put out a lot of content like I normally, or like I could maybe because I'm overthinking or I'm like,
Yeah.
is this really going to resonate? Are people going to like it? But I'm like, but I like it for me. I love doing it, but
Yeah.
are other people going to love it? It's that battle of like doing it for yourself versus doing it for others. And like, where do you find that balance? It's really hard.
Yeah.
So I know he probably struggled with that a lot, being in the limelight, especially like hitting it big. Like, I mean, even YouTubers and other artists, they say like, how do you sustain that high? Like
Yeah.
it's like post success blues, like how do you ever relive that? So
I,
definitely a huge part of it.
I read an interview just recently he did it was like the year we were born. It was like 97. And somebody asked him what he remembered about 1990. And he was like, being on top of the world, being one of the biggest bands in America and thinking that was going to last forever. Well, I mean, you can probably relate on social media. I can relate on YouTube. You're always like, well, hey, everything's, going good, but what about if suddenly your videos or your posts suddenly aren't doing
Mhm.
good? And you're like, well, what am I doing wrong? And you're not doing anything wrong. But
Yeah.
it's you
You
take that
internalize that a
feedback
lot.
and
Yeah.
internalize it. Yes. So,
Absolutely. And I know that was probably a huge reason why he, yeah, felt probably as low as he did at times or felt that depletion or, he gets this high and this rush and the dopamine and, in neuroscience terms, like all these neurotransmitters that are just like
yeah,
really, like high highs and then you crash,
yeah,
and it's hard to recover from that, especially if you're not maybe taking care of yourself in a way that you know how to. So I don't know if he had the tools to be able to like withstand some of the lows, and probably not take so personally, like his maybe failed, albums or maybe not getting as many sales or, not booking as many tours and whatever was going on, he definitely was taking it a lot more personal. He was a very sensitive person.
yeah,
And that's probably where I get it from. Like I'm very sensitive as well. Like I'm a creative, sensitive, we feel a lot and like we feel the lows and we need forms of expression to be able to feel like we can relate to people and get it out and, be seen. But then that's puts you in a vulnerable spot because when you do that, you don't know how it's going to be received and it starts to make you feel like, oh, am I not being received? Am I not enough? But he always was, but he probably just started believing, some of the thoughts in his head were true.
sure.
And, it's unfortunate, but I've had those moments too. So I feel like me and him, if we could be, have a relationship right now or he was still around, like I feel like me and him would have a lot of like very profound conversations
Yeah,
related to one another because I feel like I feel a lot of myself in him from what I was around and saw of him.
yeah,
I can relate a lot to how he must have felt, trying to pursue my own creative, avenue right now. It's a lot of
yeah,
pressure, but I'm trying to think I'm trying to think of him in these moments and be a little easier on myself and take care of myself, because nothing is worth losing your life over. Nothing is worth deteriorating, over, the right things will give you energy, make you feel like a whole person. So I'm not forcing anything at this point. And, I'm like the content creation and everything is like cathartic. I want to do it because it feels right for me. And if it takes off and people like it, that's awesome. But I'm going to try not to get too caught up in the numbers and the success of it all.
Right.
I'll find my ways to make money and pay the bills that don't require so much external validation and don't reflect off of me so much, because I know that will really that'll hit my psyche really weird, and I don't want to do that. So, yeah.
I struggled with whether to bring this up. Bobby Brown wrote in her book about an incident that happened with your dad years ago with a famous rock star. And do you have any interest in uncovering what may have happened, or are you of the mindset like, look, he's gone, there's no need to go back and dig up the past?
Yeah, I've seen like snippets of that, and I've heard what people claim happened. And again, he's not here to be able to speak on that, so we have no idea.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, I guess, if that did happen, because the industry, especially the music industry, can be very nasty. I know a lot of people get taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if it did happen. I really hope it didn't, but based on how things played out for him, that might have been a really traumatic event and maybe contributed to why he really struggled to view himself a certain way. That might have really knocked at his masculinity, like feeling safe, in his, that's his music, that's his world, that's his, love, and to have that robbed and taken from you. And he might have felt very just like out of place. And maybe, you feel shame and guilt after something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know, of course, I can't confirm or deny, but it's really heartbreaking to hear that that's something that might have happened to him. And, if Bobby wanted to share it in that way, that's on her.
Yep.
I'm not sure, again, what her sources are, but yeah, it's heartbreaking to hear that might have happened. But yeah, I don't speak a lot on it because I don't have, the backing to prove it or disprove it.
Absolutely. Of course. Do you remember the last time you saw or stayed with your dad before he passed?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this I remember pretty well because I was a little bit older. I was like 12.
Okay.
He passed away in August of 2011.
Yep.
I had been in LA visiting him and his wife at the time, Kimberly, and her daughter. Taylor might have been there as well. It was a big kind of meetup, summer break trip.
Okay.
And I came, I think it was July. I came into town. I saw my dad. He seemed a little off. They would say like he's sick or not doing well, kind of code. And I was like, okay, so I would hang out with some of my friends and their parents, and Kimberly would take us to the amusement park. And we kind of had these distractions and things to do. He was either busy, not feeling well, didn't really come with us.
Yep.
And I knew that was definitely not good, not a good sign. But I wasn't unfamiliar with that. I mean, I've had that happen before where I've had to be kind of taken to do something else to give him space, and he's not doing well. I was like, okay, maybe this trip we're not going to be able to see each other as much, but next time I come, he'll bounce back. He'll be better. That's how I always had to think, like, okay, hope for the next trip, he'll get better. Yep. Same with my mom, it was just a cycle always of like hoping that they'll get better, and then the highs and lows of that, so I was prepared, but you always think in the back of your mind, what if this is the last time, or what if this goes too far this time?
Yep.
I didn't want to go there, but I had those thoughts in my head, but I was like, all right, let's not harp on that. So I get sent home. I think I actually go home early. I get picked up. My mom gets me from the airport, and I go home to Wilmington, North Carolina. And yeah, I don't really hear from him much. And people are like, ooh, like this isn't looking good this time. Like he's really unwell. He's been at a hotel. We don't even know what's going on. I think he might have signed divorce papers, or his ex-girlfriend was trying to get him to sign papers. And it just seemed very like he was being manipulated, and it seemed really bad. But I was hearing all this from my mom and from his manager at the time. It was just a lot of like hearsay.
Yep.
So I was just like sitting there like, what's happening? Is he okay? Is he okay? And then it was like a whole day of this going back and forth and speculation that he might not make it. And that was really scary, but I'm trying to be positive and be like, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. But then we get the call that he had officially, like, he's pronounced dead, has not made it.
Yeah.
And of course I'm distraught, and my mom's distraught, and we actually hugged each other, like, hugged each other crying, and the whole house like flickered on and off like really dramatically, and it never had done that before, never did it again. Like it was a one time like surge of just energy, and I was like, I know that was him. Like one last pass. And he had mentioned to me if he were, this is kind of morbid, but I don't know what we were talking about. This was like when I was living with him in LA. We were saying like, paranormal activity, or do you believe in spirits? And he loved having abstract conversations like that. And he said if he ever passed away and he would come back to like give a signal, it would be through light.
Yeah.
So he would always said like light, electricity is always fascinating to me. So when he did that, I was like, that was absolutely him. Like one final, just like, goodbye to us.
Yeah.
And that was that. I've never felt or seen him. I mean, I feel him, I guess, metaphorically as far as like his energy, and I live through him, or he lives through me still in some ways. And we obviously have a lot similar. He's, we're blood DNA. So, but I haven't really had an encounter with him or had an experience other than dreams. I've had dreams with him in it, and we've talked. So I'm, again, who knows if that's actually real or if that's my brain, but
Yeah.
he's always with me still. But yeah, I remember that final last visit was definitely alarming, and I was definitely concerned, and then proved to be, the last. So
He was in a hotel room. There's a note that says, "I am Jani Lane." Did was there an like, does anybody know, and do you want to know, like who wrote that note? Who was with him that last night?
yeah, it's really eerie. And I was so young at the time, and I was just so kind of hurt. And I was like, I don't want to dive into this. Like, I kind of pushed things and shoved it
Sure.
away for a long time. I had heard rumors of different things. And then I was just like, I just want to be a normal kid and, stay in school, like, move on. Like, I need to really make sure me and my mom are okay. And, so I kind of pushed that away for a while. But later in life, I started hearing more about it again recently, like in the past few years or so. And it comes back to me, and I'm like, oh wow, like that is really weird. And like I would love to know more about it, but it kind of scares me to dig into. And I'm like, I don't know what the repercussions of that would be. I mean, there's rumors that his ex-girlfriend was the one with him last, and she was seen coming in and out of the room,
Okay.
was hit with something. I know she was with him getting his divorce papers signed. So there was some weird activity going on. I think there's like a love triangle or kind of weird jealousy. This girl was like super obsessed with him and was dating him when I lived with him in LA for a few years. Me and her did not get along very well at all. Like,
Is this Sheila? And I'll edit that out if you want, but is it
yeah.
Sheila? Okay.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah, we did not have a great relationship. And again, I was young, and I was probably bratty at times and didn't have the best attitude. I had a lot going on. So I'll take accountability if I was ever kind of a menace to her, but
You were a kid.
from what I remember, was always trying to be on good terms and civil with her, but she was very combative, very territorial over him, would like create drama between me and my dad that wasn't there,
Yeah.
would lie and say that I was like being defiant or wasn't doing something when I said I would. It was just very weird.
Yeah.
So it was clear she had some controlling, weird, something going on with my dad. And eventually he was like, she's crazy. I need to move out, and we're living somewhere else. So he broke up with her.
Yeah.
And I was still living with him at the time. And she would come in and look through his stuff and was really upset that he was dating someone else when that was Kimberly.
Yeah.
So I just never had the best impression of her. Like that relationship was very traumatizing for me to see him with her. And I was like, Dad, you cannot be with her anymore. Like, I do not like her. She's mean to me. She's controlling of you. You're not happy, and I'm what, like 10 or 11 telling him this stuff, or younger than that, I guess, like 9,
Yeah.
maybe 10. And then I'm like, Dad, like, this is insane, but yeah, there was a lot of weird kind of more rumors or speculations. I don't know. I can't confirm or deny what happened. And I don't think I'll be the one to open the case back up or anything like that. More than anything, I just want him to rest in peace. All those details won't really matter much to him or me at this point. What's happened has happened. But yeah, it is very interesting if I think about it for a little while, I'm like, wow, that's not great, And I am surprised it didn't launch a bigger investigation, to be honest. I don't know what happened with that.
And I think just as fans, you feel this connection to somebody, and you're like, well, you want to know, like, who was, who could have stopped this, or who could have helped anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. And I mean, it could have been even something a little bit more sinister. Like, it could have been like, the music industry or someone in the industry, he owed them something, he couldn't pay it back, and I have no idea. Like, it could have been orchestrated. I have no clue, and that's really scary to think about. But I know there's a lot of dark things that happen in the industry, and he was around people that maybe didn't have his best interest at heart. So I don't know if something might have, spiraled to a really, morbid point or not. But yeah, I can't speak to it, but yeah, whatever happened to him, I hope he went as peacefully as he could have. I really hope he didn't struggle or suffer, is all I can say, because he didn't deserve that.
Amen. Um, who did you lean on after his death? Or I'll ask that. And what was your life like afterwards? I mean, I mean, I can't imagine. So, I mean, but how did you get through that?
Ooh, yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, I stuffed a lot of it away, honestly. I kind of internalized it as, or compartmentalized it as, oh, I'm just not going to see my dad for a while. Like it was because I didn't live with him permanently at that time. I was with my mom.
Yep.
So I had lived with him on and off for a few years, but I kind of just rationalized it as, yeah, like I just won't see dad. Like I'm just living with my mom right now, So that made it feel easier to cope with.
Yeah.
But, as years go by and, I really started feeling his absence and getting older and, wanting, your dad's love and your dad's advice and having his support and him not being there for graduation and getting to college, all these things. I was like, wow, we've always talked about this and he's not here. It started really hitting me and going through college and coming out of college, working as an adult. And they say around like 24, 25, your frontal lobe develops. Like, you just become more of like a well-rounded adult. You have so many experiences. And I was like, wow, like I really feel his absence so much more now. Like I wish I had him to talk to and,
Yeah.
to be able to just, get comfort from or to be able to relate to and ask for guidance and just have fun with. Like we always had a lot of fun together and he was very goofy and never made me feel judged. I felt very myself around him. Same with my mom, honestly. Like I'll give them credit there. As parents, they made some not great decisions and they definitely struggled and brought me into their chaos a lot of times and parentified me in ways I shouldn't have been, but they did really love me and they really were just like the most like accepting and creative, fun, loving people I've ever met.
Yeah.
And always made me feel, when things were good, they were really good, like sober them was just like they were incredible. I was like, like if I could just have them like this all the time,
Yeah.
but I mean, leaning on people, of course, my mom for the time, when I was living with her when it first happened, but me and her kind of had to split ways and I had to kind of become a little bit estranged from her.
Okay.
I didn't fully like say you're out of my life forever, but I was like, I don't really feel I can talk to you, after my dad passing and her still being in her addiction. And
Okay.
I was just like at that age where I was like, I got to focus on me now. Like I've been taking care of you guys my whole life. Like I've got to do my own thing. And the right thing to do is to move out and go live with other family and get into college. Like I have to make sure my future is, in store, so she didn't like that. There was a lot of, just talk of betrayal and all this stuff. So me and her just weren't seeing eye to eye and she wasn't really taking accountability for what she did and her role and everything. So I had to kind of distance myself for a while. And you say, you're estranged from your daughter.
Yeah.
Me and her were on and off kind of estranged. We would check in here and there and I would try to give her a chance and then she would blow up and do something and relapse. And
Yeah.
it was very triggering to keep having her in my life. So I eventually kind of blocked her out for many years. And then finally, over the last couple of years, I've let her slowly back in.
Sure.
I've had conversations and she's been in multiple rehab facilities, but more trauma focused.
Okay.
And has been sober for a lot longer now and seems a lot more stable and is able to apologize and own up and wants to
Okay.
make amends. So a lot of that is signal to me that she means it, and again, that doesn't mean she's not going to relapse again, but I see notable effort and, her taking accountability. So I want to reward that. And I
Yeah.
love her. I still want her in my life. She's my one parent left, like I would love to still have a relationship, even if it's not what I wish it was or could have been. It's still nice to know that she's okay and that we can, I can give her a call if I want to. But
Sure.
I do have other family in Wilmington that I go home to more. They're like more my home base, my aunt and uncle.
Mhm.
So they kind of are like my stand-in parents, so they play that role for me and, give me that stability. But it never replaces,
Of
your
course.
true mom and dad,
Is that who you went and stayed with when things weren't good with your mom?
Yeah, mainly. I would stay with friends sometimes, and their parents, but a lot of them didn't have the means to take care of me. They had their own kids and they, couldn't afford or, it was just a lot emotionally on them having to, take me in time after time, month to month, and for me too. So
Yeah.
eventually with help of therapy and court, DSS and all these people, it seemed like the best decision to move in with my aunt and uncle my sophomore year of high school. I was 15 and that was when I had to tell my mom, like, I'm moving out. I'm sorry. Like, I can't keep doing this like cycle with you. Like, you're not getting better.
Right.
And it was really rough, but it was a good decision for me. And I lived with them and went to college and that was my family that I would come home to. That was my home base.
Okay.
I would tell my friends, oh, my parents, to keep it simple.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were my home base and they still are. Like, I still go home all the time and see them and they're like my main support system. But
Okay.
they don't have a relationship with my mom. My mom doesn't have a relationship with them. They kind of, had to sever ties after everything happened. But I would love to see that reunion again one day. I would love to see her talk to them and have a simple conversation, or, have them both at my wedding. There's a lot of things that I've been thinking about more lately. So, but we'll see with all of that. But yeah, they were my main support, and
Yeah.
friends, of course, and therapy has been a huge support too. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And honestly, just relying on myself a lot too, being my
Sure.
own best friend and having to, just be my own rock and know that everything's going to work out and be okay, even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes.
Amen. Was it a tradition? Was there a traditional funeral? The family and everybody, and you went with your mom, or what happened after he passed?
There was a memorial service
Okay.
in California. I remember that. So we flew out to LA
Okay.
or drove. I don't remember. A big blur for me,
I'm
honestly. Like
sure.
after that, that was really a weird time. But I remember the memorial service was, I don't know if it was in Malibu or somewhere nearby. It was on the water. There was a bunch of rocks, and it was like this like restaurant that we had like rented out for his memorial. So everyone was there,
Yep.
friends, family. His girlfriend or ex-girlfriend, Sheila, tried to come, and I did not like that, so I had her leave.
Oh,
I just, with everything that had come out about, she was one of the last people with him when he passed. It just seemed very weird to me. I didn't like her being there, so I told her to go.
yep.
Me and her don't have a relationship now. I mean, I think she's reached out a few times and we're civil. Obviously, I don't know the full story and I was a kid, so I'm not going to hold a grudge against her for the rest of my life. But I don't like the way things went down between me and her and him and her. So that was a weird time, but we did have a memorial and got to see everyone. And we hung out in LA, I think, for like a week or so. Me and my mom just kind of like were hanging out with our friends and family out there just to, be able to celebrate his life and be able to have some, positive moments and reflect.
Yep.
And then, yeah, came back to North Carolina and didn't really go to LA too much. I went a few times after that to visit Kimberly when she was still alive
Yep.
and her daughters because they were pretty close to me. I grew close to them over the years of him and her were married. But then she ended up passing away tragically, unfortunately, as well, a few years later. So it's been a lot of loss. It was a really weird. I was in college when I heard about that, and that was very alarming because I hadn't really talked to her much. We kind of drifted apart after the passing, but yeah, yeah, a lot of loss. But you learn how to, I guess, just keep moving forward. And I know her daughters have really strong. I know they've been through a lot themselves, and I've talked to them pretty recently, and they're doing okay.
Okay.
It is hard to feel like you have that normal relationship when you don't live with them or don't see them much anymore. I wish we could have a better, closer relationship, and maybe that's on me. Um, yeah, I would love to reconnect with them more. They were awesome. They were all rocks and supports in my life too during that time. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're awesome.
And your dad and Kimberly are buried together, right? If that, or have the
I
same.
believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, I did hear that they both got cremated and
Okay.
put together, which is really sweet.
Okay.
So I'm glad they get to be together.
And this will be the last thing I'll ask about, but do you ever were you ever angry? I mean, and you would be justified. And were you ever like, damn it, why couldn't you get sober? I mean, and I ask it that way because my stepfather was an I was an alcoholic, and
Mhm.
I those were questions that I would ask. I mean, did you ever struggle with that?
Absolutely. Yes. And that is something that I think I'm kind of currently exploring right now. Anger, resentment. I have a lot of it harbored in me. I'm not a very outwardly angry, mean person. I'm usually the one that's kind of the bubbly, putting on the front, everything's fine person.
Yeah.
But deep down, I have a lot of anger that comes out kind of irrationally in random situations. And people will be like, oh, like, I'm surprised I set you off so much. Or, oh, like, you seem kind of more irritable, but I'm like, wow, like, I think there's a lot in there that I was not able to fully. I would, every once in a while with my mom or dad, I would plead with them or yell at them, write them notes, be like, why aren't you getting sober? Like, what is going, like, am I not enough? Like, what is going on? So I had a lot of anger and they saw that anger. I mean, a lot, but it didn't do anything. I mean, at the end of the day, they knew what they were doing was harmful and I was angry, but they couldn't overcome their own demons. So a lot of my anger kind of started becoming more of an inward anger where I was like, no matter what I express, it's not going to change anything. So why even express my anger? So I started really stifling it inward and
Yeah.
kind of keeping it inside of me. And I think that started to really take a toll on my body. I was in kind of fight or flight survival mode more than I realized and was had my guard up in a lot of areas of my life. And
Yeah.
I think it has stifled me a lot, like I haven't felt like I've really been in tune with myself. I felt very like who am I, without all of this pain and anger? Like, who am I? I don't feel normal. I don't feel like I just navigate things like other people do. Like things come not as easy for me,
Yeah,
but I'm blessed in a lot of ways too, obviously. Like
of course.
you could flip that other coin and be like, yeah, you're blessed that you have a support system and you got to go to college and, you get to do all these cool things, social media, like, money wise, like, I'm very blessed and I always keep that into account, but it's okay to acknowledge too that, yeah, like emotionally speaking, what you don't see, like there's a lot of anger in here still that I'm working through and learning to healthily express, and process, which a lot of honestly, like exercise has been really good for that for me. Writing, being able to, yeah, just like go on walks and like sometimes just like even let it out a little bit. Like it might sound weird, but like even just being in private, like just having like a really hard sigh or like if
Yeah.
you need to scream sometimes even, like I don't do that very often, but I honestly feel like I could benefit from like a nice just like scream session, like just alone, in the middle of a forest or something, and just let it out because I never really had a chance to. And when I did, it didn't really get received or people weren't really,
Yeah.
receptive of my anger. It was more like, oh yeah, like, all right. Anyway, everyone was in their own world when I was a kid. I didn't really feel like I got the time to really be asked, like, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, besides therapy and other things. But yeah, anger's still there for sure, processing it, but finding healthy ways to outlet it and not let it bubble up in me anymore because I know that's not beneficial to me or anyone else. So,
I know your social media, you do a lot of you did some workout video stuff, and so
mhm.
I'm kind of a big fitness fanatic. I probably don't look it at my age, but anyway, like so I'm
Oh, you look
completely with
great.
you. You find those things and exercise that makes you feel so good about yourself, helps you feel more confident. So
Mhm.
I that's awesome.
Yeah, you can relate. Yeah, I
Totally,
appreciate that.
totally. Um, and okay, so I guess, and I think I heard you say this, that when your dad died, he didn't have a will. And so I'll stop. What happened with his estate? And you kind of said that you and Taylor didn't really get, and of course it's not all about money, but obviously you're his kids. You should
Right.
get, whatever. So anyway, what happened with the estate after he passed?
So, to my understanding, my dad did not have a will. So that complicated things as far as his estate and his music and who owned what, and there was so much, I think so much was entangled that people didn't know who owned the rights to what. And it caused a big freeze, honestly, for many years. His estate wasn't even touched. Attorneys were like, putting things off, putting things off, putting things off. And so I was just in waiting a lot of the time, figuring, by that time, I wasn't worried about the money. I'm in college. I'm trying to navigate
Yep.
my studies and relationships and figuring out my passions and everything. So I didn't fixate. My sister Taylor was a little bit more involved on the legal side, just looking over everything and
Yep.
making sure we were, getting the best deal we could
Yeah.
on everything. And I was kind of in the background, like looking over everything and doing what I needed to do that they asked for. But
Yep.
yeah, eventually, like years go by. So 2011 is when he passed. We didn't get any disbursement until 2019
Oh, no way.
if that tells you anything. So it was like that long of like, I mean, I don't know what was going on in with the attorney side or if things were, weird. Also, my godfather, who he's not my godfather anymore, but he would have been my unofficial godfather, my dad's manager, Abby.
Abby Steinman.
Yeah, he sued the estate and demanded more money from that then because, he managed him all these years and, maybe something with the accounting and the finances, he felt like he got the short end of the stick. So instead of going about it a different way, he came after the estate, which, was obviously going to be going for it to us, me and
Yeah.
Taylor and Kimberly at the time.
Yeah.
So that also put things on hold for a while. So that really disappointed me. I was like, I would go visit him a lot in California and, with my dad, and I knew his two sons really well. And he felt like a dad to me in a lot of ways, or like an uncle, to have him do that, not really tell us or ask us ahead of time at all. Like he just went ahead and did it. It felt very, I felt betrayed.
Yeah.
And I talked to him once about it, and I think he tried to justify it. And I just was like, I can't have a relationship. Like, I just don't feel like I can trust you anymore. It just felt very slimy. So
Yeah.
he got his share. I don't know how much it is. He probably got a decent amount from that. But me and my sister and Kimberly we got in thirds,
Yep.
like our own split.
Yep.
So we did receive something. And I mean, finally, at the end of like almost a decade later, we're like, okay, finally, we've gotten, what we deserve and what dad would want for us. But, yeah, it definitely wasn't what we could have gotten. And a lot of his other royalties and publishing rights and master's rights to other catalogs were sold to different, labels. So we don't have access to that or any royalties we don't get currently.
Okay.
Again, Jerry has been from the band Warrant. He's been really good at keeping us in the loop with anything that they discover. If the band Warrant, they're like, oh wow, we've have this like, set up with somebody or there's royalties that we have access to now that we've worked a deal out. We want you to be a part of it. He'll let me know.
Okay.
So we do get some payouts, which is really nice, And again, it's not all about the money, but it is
No.
a factor. I know Dad would be very disappointed in how things played out.
Right.
I don't know how well he knew his finances either. So I don't know what exactly was going on behind the scenes, but yeah, it was a weird time. And, I am disappointed in how it played out, but I'm thriving and I'm okay. And like, I have, my head on my shoulders and I stand on my own 2 feet and I have my own career, goals and passions. So I'm definitely not like reliant on that money, but now
Yes.
I have things in savings and I'm blessed to have that, as a
Yep.
cushion and to be able to make, large payments on. He helped me get through school. I say my dad paid for my school, I'm like, that's really cool. So to be able to have that is really lucky.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely don't sit and like hold a grudge about it or I'm not, mulling around about it, but
Of course.
I recognize we did get gypped a little bit for sure.
Of course. And we're going to talk about what you're doing now, and I appreciate your time, and I hope we can have about maybe 15 more minutes if that's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
um, your dad had all these songs, these Jabberwocky, he called this project, and a lot of these songs are floating around on YouTube, and every Warrant fan is like, why isn't that being released? And
Hmm.
you and Taylor or well, whoever gets the publishing, obviously we would rather it be you and Taylor, but why doesn't this stuff get released? And we just want, is somebody holding it up? Or I'll stop there.
So I don't know exactly like all the exact,
Oh,
who has the rights to what. And I know there's a lot of unreleased music.
yeah.
So I'm not the most well versed in that, I'll be honest. But I can't say too much about this, but there is an interesting avenue that me and my sister are looking into with some of the unreleased music,
Yeah.
being able to work with someone to re-release it or like actually like officially release it
Yeah.
on an album, and be able to yeah, have to kind of get like a 50-50 deal or something with a group. So looking into that right now. We still haven't solidified everything, but we're looking to release some of his unreleased stuff. And I actually would love to be able to do my own renditions of either his unreleased music or duet with him on the song in some
Oh my
way,
God.
which would be awesome.
That
So
would
I've
break the
done some of his
internet.
covers. Yeah,
It would
I've done
break
some
the
of his
internet.
covers already on
Yeah.
Bandcamp. If
Yes.
people aren't aware, you can go check those out. Those are from like, almost 10 years ago now. And
Yeah.
like leading up to that around the pandemic, I did one.
Yep.
And then afterwards. So over the years, over the last 10 years, I've done a bunch of covers of his and one original song of mine, and then another project with another guy who wrote a song who needed a female vocal. But I'm kind of in the works right now, figuring out how can we release some of that music on our terms
Yep.
and find the best deal that
Yep.
benefits everybody and people can reimagine his music and you know all that amazing work that he put into those songs can
Yeah.
see the light of day and in the right way, not be bootlegged or
Of
released
course.
on these random websites. I want them to be officially released by us. So we're working on that, and I'll just keep posted on
Yeah.
my page to see some
Yep.
updates there because we are working on some of that right now.
Well, and I'm going to ask you about your songs, and you did some Warrant songs and some other songs. I'm going to ask about that, but FNA Records put out a Warrant Tribute album, and your three Warrant covers are on that. And I work with them in a way. I do some promotion stuff. I interview their artists and promote their materials. So anyway, I know there's an interest in getting this music of his released, and like I said, hopefully you and Taylor benefiting from that because you should. Anyway, there are many avenues. So uh, yeah, and I mean, these fans are like desperate to have that stuff
I
released.
know people reach out all the time, and even people from my hometown, people on the internet, people are like, "When are you releasing more music?" Or like, "When
Uh,
are you doing more stuff with your dads?" Like, people are very invested, and I think it's really cool because it was more of a passion project for me to just want to, do something in honor of my dad, and I love to sing, and
yeah,
it just felt like the right thing to do back then, and it was a way to kind of connect with him,
yeah,
after he passed, and
yeah,
be able to connect more with his fans as well, and I knew that would give them something to look forward to, and just, his daughter, it's still a part of him, being able to put out music is really cool. So I love it. But now, yeah, I am looking into some other options now, being able to release some of that stuff and do it on our terms. So that'll be really fun to work on that.
And the 3 Warrant songs that you did, Heaven, you did Stronger Now, which I have tattooed on my arm. You did Sometimes She Cries. And those
Mm-hmm.
are on your Bandcamp, and that link will be in the description. And they're on
Yes.
this FNA Records Warrant Tribute. That
Mm-hmm.
I'll put the picture and I'll put the link for that if you want to buy that in the description. How did, and I mean, Heaven's maybe obvious, it was the biggest hit, but how did you choose Heaven, Stronger Now, Sometimes She Cries? I mean, was there a connection to those songs, or what made you go with those to record?
So Heaven was the first one I did, and that one felt very relevant to, losing him,
Yeah,
being in heaven and not being too far away. He talks about being the hero of this little girl.
yeah,
I felt a very strong connection to cover that song just with everything that happened.
yeah,
And yeah, I felt like this connection to him when I was recording and putting it out there, and people were very positive in their responses about it and loved it. And it was really cool to see.
mhm,
And of course, it's one of his most iconic songs too.
yeah,
So combining that with the relevance and meaning personally to me, it just made sense as the first song to do.
yeah,
And then after that, I believe I did Stronger Now,
yeah,
which again, very relevant because it describes going through a really tough time and feeling like someone's fading away, but you're stronger at the end of it. And
yeah,
that's one of my favorite songs of his, just generally. Once I heard it, I was like, I cannot get the song out of my head. It's so good.
yeah,
And it really described how I felt about losing him.
yeah,
So that was another reason I wanted to do that one. And I just love the simplicity of the song, like it's so complex yet so simple.
yeah,
It was like kind of one of his genius, releases, and it deserved more attention than it got.
yeah,
Sometimes she cries, I guess about, sometimes she cries. Sometimes I
yeah,
cry, and I miss him. So a lot of the songs that I went with were ones that I could relate to about how I feel towards my dad or
yeah,
what I could have expressed to him or something like that. And just fun to record because they're songs that everyone loves of his. And were in my range and just felt
yeah,
right to do. So
yeah.
yeah, and then I had Tom Gosson. He was in the band Gloriana,
Yes.
country band, and he opened for Taylor Swift at one point. He's in Wilmington now. We're like family friends with him, and he has a recording studio in his house that I would go to, up in like the finished room over the garage,
Yeah.
and we would record some of this there. So that was really cool that I got to do that with him. He was really really understanding. He let me see the process and let me do a lot of edits and takes, and that was a lot of fun. So I love recording. I love music. I don't necessarily see myself being like the main pop star artist, like selling artists in arenas. Like that's not really my vibe. I kind of want to keep it more low profile
Yep.
and have a more, I'd say stable lifestyle, I guess,
Yeah.
and not feel like I'm giving myself to the world too much. But I do love music, and I think it'll always be a part of me, and I'll always want to record and sing in some capacity, just because it just feels like it's a way for me to express myself and connect with my dad. So.
Sure. That you mentioned Tom Gosson from the band Gloriana, who had some success, like you said, opened up for Taylor
Mhm.
Swift. There's a song on your Bandcamp called Drinking Games that
Yes.
I love. It feels like it's relevant to the story about your dad. How did that song come about?
Yeah, oddly, kind of a coincidence with the dual meaning for the song, but
Yeah.
he just came to me. So I'd been recording with him a few times, doing my dad's covers, and he was like, "I actually have a song that I had recorded and written with a couple other people, and it never saw the light of day. We didn't really find the right female vocal on it, and it kind of got locked away in the archives." But he was like, "I would love to bring it back and have you on it. I love your voice."
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm game for it. Let's do it. So we
Yeah.
started recording it, and it was a challenge for me because it was a little bit more country.
Yeah.
It was like it's like country not hip hop. I don't know, like country pop vibe.
Yeah.
It has
Country
a
pop.
cool
Yeah.
like kind of like vibe to it, but it was definitely a challenge because I hadn't sang a song quite like that before and had to really like feel the song, get into it
Yeah.
because I didn't have a connection to the song like I did my dad. So it was fun though. It was a really cool project, and I love it. Actually, it's really catchy. It's a really great song. I wish we could have released it like more like on streaming platforms and really blew it up, but he didn't have the rights from all the writers
Okay.
previously to do that. So we had to put it on a platform where it was like pay if you want, not streaming.
Yes.
So, but it'd be really cool to be able to release some of that one day. Maybe
Oh,
we'll.
that's a great song. Okay.
Yeah, it's catchy.
And then you have an original song called My Turn
Mm-hmm.
on
Yeah.
Bandcamp. So tell me about that. How does that come about?
I was single for a long time and had been in some not the best relationships with other guys
Yeah.
and was just feeling a bit lonely and seeing people around me finding their person and, feeling like when is it going to be my turn to like find, that love and
Yeah.
feel that way with somebody. So I wrote that. I was like writing it in my phone notes, I think, one day, just feeling frustrated. And I was like, oh, I have this melody in my head. Like, and I just started writing. I would write sometimes just like for fun on my own when I was in my apartment. And that one really stuck out to me. And I was like, you know what? Like I hit up Tom and I was like, I really want to do my own song,
Yeah.
and let's get to work. So I wrote it, sang it, recorded it, and put it out, and people really liked it. That was the last thing. I think that's my last music project on there, I believe.
Yeah.
I haven't put out anything else yet, but I want to keep putting out more. I actually just went to Cleveland to record a song with a guy named Jeremy Lucas. He has a band called Yellow Five.
Okay.
It was like a solo project, love song, kind of like Southern rock vibe. He
Yeah.
liked hearing my vocals on some of those songs on Bandcamp and was like, "Oh my God, like I loved your dad. Like, can you be on the song with me?" And I was like, "Okay." So he
Yeah.
flew me and my boyfriend, now boyfriend, out
Yeah.
to do the recording, and it was really, really cool. So it felt kind of like drinking games where I'm collaborating with someone
Yeah.
else on their song, but I had some creative input and had to
Sure.
kind of really get into it and, almost like create this character of who I was.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool opportunity. We're actually going to be releasing that at some point soon. He's working on it still in the studio, but that'll
Okay.
become hopefully by the end of the month.
Okay.
I'm not sure what the song will be called yet, but yeah, it's a really cool song. I had fun doing it with him. So I want to be recording more and more now,
Okay.
definitely. So be
Awesome.
on the lookout for some other music projects from me.
Well, and I will promote the hell out of it because and I'm not just saying this, I wouldn't just say it. You have a fantastic voice. I mean, and it's, maybe it's genetic, but you have a great voice. It's very unique.
Thank you.
So, um, and it's on YouTube. I think it's your first live performance. It was shit,
In Cleveland, yeah.
in 2023 in Cleveland. You in May 20th in Cleveland, and it's a tribute show for your dad, and you do Heaven with
Yeah.
Billy Morris and a band. And so what do you remember about that? Getting up there and singing that for the first time live?
Yeah, I was nervous, but they had reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be a part of it. They were going to be in Cleveland, and I hadn't been to a tribute show of his yet, and I'd been recording some of his songs.
Yeah,
And I was like, you know what? Like, this would be cool to get out of my comfort zone. I'm not the best on stage, or I'm not like comfortable. Like, I'm not a natural born, I would say, like, wants to be the center of attention on stage. I get a bit shy.
sure,
But I was like, this would be a cool opportunity. It's not that big of a crowd, it's very intimate. And, if I do one song with them, one or two songs, let's do it. So I definitely did have to have some liquid courage before going up there. I had a little like celebratory shot before I went up
sure,
there.
sure,
And then, of course, I had been warming up and practicing. But yeah, I went up there and it was so much fun. Once I got up there, it felt so natural. And the
yeah,
band behind me was just so, they were both so like supportive and very positive and were, backing me very well and letting me have my moment, but still
yeah,
making sure I didn't feel alone up there. So
yep,
it was a lot of fun. We did Heaven and Cherry Pie, I believe. And
yeah,
then we danced around and
yeah,
afterwards I took pictures with people and signed
yeah,
autographs and that's when people were telling me they were like, wow, you remind us so much of your dad, like you have his aura, like his energy is still here. And I was like, that's so awesome to hear that because people they didn't know my dad, so they don't
yeah,
ever have that feedback. But them saying like I went to a show and now I'm here and you remind me so much of him, or
yeah,
oh my God, you're talking to all of us after the show just like he would do, like you're so interested in us, like you
yeah,
love people just like he did. So it was really reassuring to hear that.
yeah,
And it made me feel really proud of him
yeah,
and me. I was like, wow, like, my dad was such a badass. And now that I get
yeah,
to like be a fraction of what he was, that's just so cool. So
yeah.
I would love to do more of that. I've reached out to Warrant themselves too. Every time they've had a show nearby, it hasn't worked out. But
Oh,
eventually I would love to get on stage with the actual Warrant band and maybe do a couple songs on one of their tours. So
that was one of my questions. I hope that happens. And I know they're talking about putting out a box set, and it seems like the smartest thing you could do is to or put out a new version of a Heaven or a Stronger Now and let you duet with your father. I mean, that would be, like I
yeah.
said, I think it would break the internet if something like that happened. So,
Yeah,
um,
I definitely want to do something like that as well. I hope it works out with our schedules and everything. It's been in the talks for many years, but
yeah.
I think now I'm feeling like I really want to push forward on that. So
Sure. Um, your uncle Eric Oswald, um, plays guitar. He played the opening of Uncle Tom's Cabin.
Hmm.
Does a lot of music and stuff. Have you ever talked to him about like, hey, maybe, doing something? Or I don't know if you guys have a relationship, but anyway, I mean, I know he's a musician, has written songs. Have
Hmm.
you ever talked about doing anything with him?
Yeah, we've talked intermittently over the years. We haven't been as close, but I was hoping he would be able to come to Cleveland when I did the tribute show a couple years ago, and he couldn't. But I think he was having some health complications at that time. But he is still active in the music community. I have a bunch of like mutual friends from Ohio that always say they see him and play with him, and they love just being around him, and he's so talented. So I would love to reach out to him, especially if I really get more serious, into recording more of my dad's stuff, unreleased things.
Yeah.
I would definitely love to talk with him more about that. And I would love to perform with him. We have a video on YouTube of us playing. I'm playing the harmonica, he's playing the guitar.
So you gotta let me get all the way through it. And then
Oh,
So
okay.
here, I'm gonna go all the way through it.
Okay.
And the day we sweated out on the streets.
It was at my Aunt Vicky's house back in Ohio, like Akron area. And that was a very quick video that got posted, and people were loving that. I love looking back at it too because it's just hilarious. I had braces and I'm like so young. But yeah, me and him had always a really good relationship. We've drifted apart a bit over the years, but I would love to kind of reignite that and be able to maybe do something else with him soon.
Sure. That's awesome. So I said at the beginning, you're a creative strategist, you're a social media. What other ventures do you have going on? And what do you hope is coming up for you in the next 10 years?
So I'm actually moving to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm in Chapel Hill right now, kind of
Yeah.
central state of North Carolina. I
Yeah.
just finished my master's here, so I've been here. My boyfriend's here as well. He runs his own business here, and that's kind of how we met. Interesting story. I won't get into all of that, but we're both moving to Charlotte together now, which
Okay.
is the west part of the state. It's a really, really cool area. I'm really excited to get there, keep doing my creative strategy and social media work, and maybe find some new clients out that way.
Yeah.
I'm also, like I mentioned, really into fitness. So I recently got my ACE certification to do coaching and fitness instruction.
Okay.
So I'm hoping I can start teaching classes. I love cycle. It's very music, BPM focused cycle sessions. So I'm hoping I can get involved with a studio there when I move. And of course, some of the music as well. I really want that to be a big part of my life. So I think those three things are kind of my trifecta. And then outside of that, just enjoying myself and
Yeah.
curating fun experiences for my friends and I and my partner, and just enjoying myself and exploring my late 20s into my 30s, with grace. So
Okay.
that's what I have going on.
And I was gonna, you kind of mentioned it, but I see on Instagram there's this dude who keeps showing up. So do you care to shed any light about who this guy is? If you want to, you don't have to.
Yes, no, of course I can. Yeah, his name's Willie. We met at UNC a while ago, actually, and we're really good friends for a while before we started dating. And we had actually worked together on a venture. I came back to Chapel Hill for my master's in 2023, and he was running his own business at that point and needed help. And we both collaborated, and I started working with him while I was in school, and we got really close and started dating. We don't work together anymore. We saw that there might be, mixing business and pleasure can be fun, but not maybe the best in the long run. So we learned that lesson, and I decided I wanted to go, start my own things. I wanted to feel like that sense of fulfillment that I have my own track, my own life. So that's really helped our relationship. And now he's entrepreneurial. He does like software and event planning and a bunch of things. He's very creative and very fun to just like talk with and brainstorm with. That's what really brought us together and what continues to keep that spark alive in our relationship. We're almost 2 years in, and things are wonderful, and we're moving in together. So he's been a rock and a huge support in my overall journey with my career, of course, and school and getting through that, and now just navigating my life and my relationships. And he's always been very impressed with how I've handled everything that's happened, and he's so intrigued with my past, and he wishes he could have met my dad. And I tell him all the time, he kind of reminds me of him. He's also pretty musical.
Okay.
He can play piano, and his family comes from a very music background. So
Okay.
there's a lot in common, I would say. He's also very like silly and dorky like my dad was. So I'm like, apple doesn't fall far, I guess. And I definitely look for that in a partner like I had with my dad. So
Right.
yeah, he's awesome, and he's been wonderful. And he'll definitely be on my page more as time goes on too.
Okay. And I'll just would And whether it's with Willie or who, would you see yourself as somebody who wants to have children one day? Could there ever be a young little daughters or sons running around? Is that something you would want to do in your future?
Yes. Yeah, I definitely want a family. I'm definitely no rush. I'm kind of
Right.
just, I feel like I have a lot to kind of work through, and I wanted to explore my own self and my own life for a little while, but I definitely want to make sure I have a family. So probably within the next like 5 or so years, I would start leaning in that direction and building that life. But
Okay.
yeah, I can't wait to be a mom. I can't wait to give my kids the life that I would have wanted and be that really stable, just, on top of it parent. Again, no parent is perfect, but
Of course.
I hope I can give them, even a little bit more, even like a fraction more than what I was able to get as a kid, and be able to give them the love that my parents did give me, through everything. They really did love me and always made sure I knew that. So
Yep.
I'm very excited to be able to start that journey as a mom. Yeah.
That's awesome. So I know you're big on Instagram. That'll be down below. Your Bandcamp will be down below. Is there any other socials that you want me to send people to after they watch this?
I think that's pretty much it. I try not to spread myself so thin anymore. I'm not even really
Okay.
active on YouTube. Instagram, I do have a TikTok. I think it might be in my bio of my
Okay.
Instagram. It's the
Okay.
same username. So you can
Sure.
find TikTok as well. I post more like funny things on there.
Okay.
Instagram where I'm a little bit more, I guess, professional slash
Yeah.
more personal life gets on posted
Sure.
on there. TikTok, I post a lot of funny memes and stuff. But
Okay.
yeah, those are my main three.
Okay. Uh, Maddie Lane, I was such a fan of your dad. His music impacted my life more than I can even tell you. And for you to come on and share all of this stuff, and you seem wise beyond your years. You're so well spoken. I think you have an incredible future ahead of you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I'm glad I got to hang out with you for a little bit and shed some light on my dad and myself.
And if you ever if you have any projects that you're gonna put out or do anything musical, you're always welcome back on. But I will let you know when this comes out. But it was just an honor to speak with you.
You too. Thanks so much.
All right, you take care of yourself.
You too.
All right, bye bye.